Hey family, this is Pastor Jonathan. Thanks for joining me on this installment of Pajama Pants Preaching. Well, we're in Holy Week, the week leading up to Easter, and in fact it's Thursday. Many of you know it as Holy Thursday or maybe Maundy Thursday. And I have to tell you that Maundy Thursday is one of my favorite days of Holy Week because Jesus gave us so much on that original Thursday, the day before he was crucified, which was the original Good Friday, of course. But that Thursday, so much happened, and I want to talk to you about why it's so special, not just to me, but to Christians all around the world, and also why it's called Maundy Thursday. Well, one of the big events that occurred that day was what we now call the Last Supper. That was where Jesus and his disciples had their final meal together, and in fact it commemorates Passover, because many believe that the Last Supper was the first night of Passover that year. And so that's a very big deal. It was a big deal for first century Jews, as it is for modern day Jews as well. Passover is one of the main holidays in the Jewish calendar, and it is considered a very holy time for our Jewish friends. And Jesus and his disciples were celebrating Passover that evening. Now, if you remember, the reason that Passover is such a big deal for our Jewish friends is because they are remembering their freedom from slavery by Pharaoh, that God delivered them and saved them from the slavery that they were in Egypt. And Passover, in fact, is called Passover because the last plague that God put on the people of Egypt was that the angel of death was going to kill, and did kill, the firstborn son of every family, but that the angel of death passed over any home that had the blood of the lamb put on the door jambs. And so modern day Jews still remember that and celebrate God's grace to them in saving them through that plague. And so that is a huge deal. And the crazy thing about the Last Supper that Jesus and his disciples commemorated was that, again, Passover is about remembering what God did for the Hebrew people. And during that ceremony, Jesus broke from the script and said, don't just remember Passover, but remember me. He told the disciples that his body was going to be broken like the bread, and his blood was going to be shed as a sign of the new covenant. And he said, every time you eat the bread, every time you drink the wine, to remember him. Now that's crazy, because in effect he was telling his disciples, who are all Jews, to remember him on Passover, not only to remember what God had done. And so he was placing himself equal, maybe even above Passover. Now that it was unthinkable to a Jew, because Passover, like I said, is a huge holiday. It is extremely important, and it is about remembering what God did for the Hebrew people when they were enslaved in Egypt. And Jesus was saying, remember me, to remember himself during this time. That, again, must have absolutely shocked the disciples. But it didn't end there. The next thing that happens is after they finish their meal. Jesus, after saying, remember me that I am as equal or greater than the Passover, he then shows his servanthood. He shows how he was sent to serve, not to be served. And he washed the feet of all the disciples. He got on his hands and knees and washed their feet as a servant or as a slave. He washed all of their feet, even Judas's feet, which, looking back, is absolutely shocking. That Jesus, knowing that Judas was going to betray him, he washed Judas's feet. And that, we know, shocked everyone. In fact, Peter resisted, said, no, Jesus, you can't wash my feet. You shouldn't be washing my feet. And Jesus admonished him, told him, I have to wash your feet or you have no part of me. And so Jesus was explaining that if you want to be part of me, you have to let me serve. You need to serve yourself. You need to serve as well. So, and then right after he washes all the disciples' feet, what does Jesus do? The next thing he does actually is he tells the disciples that it's going to be Judas who's going to betray him. So again, he knew that Judas was going to betray him even when Jesus was washing Judas's feet. And that betrayal would lead to Jesus' death. Do you ever wonder how the disciples responded, or maybe should have responded, could have responded, when Jesus told them that Judas was going to betray him? I mean, Peter was a hothead. Why didn't Peter just kill Judas right then and there? Well, it's because of what Jesus said right after that. And this is where we get the term Maundy, Thursday from. Jesus told the disciples, right after he had told them that Judas was going to betray him, he said, and this I'm quoting from the Gospel of John, chapter 13, verses 34 and 35, which says that Jesus said, a new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. So what was Jesus saying? He was saying that you need to love each other, and that's the only way people are going to know that you are with me and that you're one of my disciples. And the word Maundy comes from the Latin word that means command. And so when we say it's Maundy, Thursday, it is the day that Jesus gave us that new command, that he told us how are people going to know that we are disciples of Jesus? By loving one another. That it's a new command. So it is as high as like the 10 commandments, similar to when Jesus was asked what's the greatest commandment. He said the greatest commandment is to love God and then to love your neighbor as yourself. So this command to love one another was such a big deal. And so today, as we commemorate Maundy, Thursday, let's remember to follow Jesus' command to love one another. Even if we continue to social distance, let's not emotionally distance. Let's love those who are difficult to love. But let's in particular also love those who are giving their lives for us, our first responders, our nurses and doctors who are caring for our community in this pandemic. Let's love one another, and that's how we should remember Maundy, Thursday. So be blessed. Don't forget to connect with us on our church website, newhopenorthcc.com, and hashtag me at hashtag pajama pants preaching. Until next time, we love you and love one another.